Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
All right. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. This week's guest is Missy Shopshire, and she started her career in sales, reaching the top 2% in the multi-billion-dollar company. She held that position for over 10 years, during which she learned the importance of building a team, leading them well, and working toward a shared vision of success. Then a near-death experience caused her to reevaluate her life. Leaving the sales industry at the top of her game, she switched gears to become a certified life and business coach. Now she helps leaders do what she learned to do, align with a higher purpose, and achieve their true potential. Welcome, Missy. It's great to have you here today.
It's great to be here.
Well, thank you. Well, we were talking before about, your very fascinating life experience. Could you share with the audience your milestones that led you to where you're at now?
Yeah. I think that this chapter of my story started back when I did get involved with sales. Mm-hmm. We moved to Indiana for a job, and then that job disappeared. And we found ourselves here with two small children, and I was looking for work. So I went to a Mary Kay event. Uh-huh. And I went really just with the intention of networking and kind of getting out of the house, because I wasn't really a makeup girl, and I didn't really think I was built to work exclusively with women.
Sure.
But I did sign up that night. It was just a really compelling presentation, and I ended up becoming very successful in that career. Fabulous. So, like you said in the introduction, I reached the top 2% of this multi-billion-dollar organization, and it was really a great experience, and I loved it. As you know, that Mary Kay is just an iconic brand, and they give away pink cars. They give away lots of cars, but we earned 12 free cars while I was in Mary Kay, and 7 of them were pink Cadillacs.
Now, you earned 12 or your team earned 12?
Well, it's a team.
Okay.
I get to drive the pink car, but my team certainly, it's based on their...
You won, how many, was it 7?
7, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
7 pink Cadillacs. And I could just hear everybody, family driving down the whole road, the highway, and they're all in a pink Cadillac with Bruce Springsteen on the radio.
Yep. That's what everyone says is, what do you do with 7 pink Cadillacs? And my teenage boys would tell you that you can drive them to high school, and they have. So we still have one left, and my son is a senior in high school, and it's sitting over there in the parking lot right now.
So everybody knows that's your...
Yeah.
That's...
My husband drove one to work, and I mean, people gave him a hard time about it, but they were kind of proud of it. The kids, and my husband, they were proud of my success, and so they weren't above driving them.
Sure. Well, that's great. That's great that everybody, but that's a funny story. But the guys, you know how high school boys are.
Well, they don't like to drive it to Lowe's on a Saturday, but they will drive it.
Gotcha. I get my big pickup truck. Yeah. But that's great, and that's great that you were able to do that for your family, and they obviously really appreciated it.
Yeah. So that was a big milestone. Is just developing that skill set, realizing that I was good at sales and that I really did enjoy it.
Yes.
But during that time, we also went through some significant challenges as a family. So right about the time I hit the peak of that career, my daughter was diagnosed with stage 3 kidney cancer. And she had just had her 4th birthday. So I think that experience for us as a family, it did slow me down quite a bit. I mean, it's one of those all hands on deck kind of experiences where she's perfectly healthy one day, and the next day she's fighting for her life.
Wow.
And so even that my story was, it slowed me down enough to really realize that how precious and short life is. Mm-hmm. And so I began to feel some discontent even in my career, even though I was so grateful for it, because the women that I worked with just jumped in and helped us with, they brought casseroles and they helped me with my team during that time.
That's great. That's great support.
Yeah. And her story ended well because she is in full remission today. She just had her own baby, and
Wow. That's
so
awesome.
she's completely healthy. But that was a big moment in life. You know, I was a young mom, and that's probably one of the scariest things that you can go through.
Yeah, it would be. With your own child.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be very tough to
Yeah.
go through.
Yeah.
And, well, I'm very happy that you're all through that.
Yeah. And she's a Spitfire too, so
that's
she,
good.
you know, they say, you know, it's just those experiences make you stronger, and it really
Yeah.
has woven itself into her personality. And she's a strong person. She's a compassionate person, and she just is wise beyond her years. I think
Okay.
because of that.
She takes
So-
after mother.
Yeah, right. And we thought that was our big challenge, but really, a year after that, there was another milestone, I would say, and that was I had my own health challenge. Shortly after our youngest son was born, I became very ill and had a life-threatening infection that put me in the hospital and landed me in a coma for 4 days.
Oh, my goodness.
And that is something that they didn't expect me to recover from. And we talked about health challenges too,
Sure,
and how
yeah.
it just really brings you to your knees. So that time, you know, if Grace's illness slowed me down, my own illness really stopped me in my tracks
Sure.
and caused me to reevaluate everything in my life, and especially my career, which had always been good to me, but I had always also felt like a fish out of water, and always wondered if there was something more or if I was reaching my potential. And so when I did recover and I had a chance to live more years, these are the bonus years. I always look at these years as the bonus years.
Yes.
And so I began to really make some changes in how I was living and what was
Sure.
important.
Yeah, that's deep. That's very, because it gets to the center of our soul, our lives. So when you had the NDE, do you remember, or was that something that you just kind of went through and came out of?
I really remember it because it really is. It's like a pivot. You know, you're going one direction in your life, and something like that happens, and I was going a completely different direction afterwards. So what was interesting about mine, I don't know if it's a legitimate NDE or not. I didn't see a white light. I didn't leave my body or anything like that, but I do know that I was not expected to live. And a few weeks before this happened, I had a premonition that I died in childbirth, a dream.
Wow.
And I had shared it with several of my friends, so they were really worried. They were like, that was
Yeah.
coming true. And then during that time, I was put in a medically induced coma. So you're kind of in this space between, there were moments where I could hear voices and I could hear people talking around me. I heard things that the nurses and doctors said that I couldn't respond to. At one point, one of the nurses said, "Have you ever seen anyone with blood pressure this low?" And I wanted to say, "I can hear you." But I remember having a conversation, and I think it was with God, but it was a figment of my imagination. But I felt like it was my time to die, and I felt like God was saying, "I want you to come with me now." And I was fighting to stay because I just had a baby. I had a daughter
You
who
want to
was
be
sick.
there for your family.
I didn't feel like it was time for me to go.
Wow.
And I felt like God granted my request. And when I woke up, the experience that I had was very different than the experience my family had, because they expected me to be very sick, very long recovery. And when I woke up, I knew I was going home. So
Wow.
I pushed pretty hard to get
Was
home.
it that day?
I went home the next day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to keep an eye on you at least for
Excuse
one
me.
day. That's an amazing story. I mean, I haven't gone through something like that. That would pivot your life. If you're conscientious of realities of life and so forth, that would,
Yeah.
especially going through that, and you're like, I've got to reevaluate things.
It's a moment of awareness where you just can't deny. I think we do a lot of things to keep ourselves from thinking about deeper things. We stay busy,
Yeah.
we entertain ourselves, but there was no getting around. I had to face this fact
Sure.
that I had one life to live, and I wanted to make the most of it.
Yeah,
So
that's incredible. So what was the next milestone from there?
I just had this sense of wanting to find my purpose.
Okay.
And that's such a big idea, and I didn't know where to start. So I started taking like these assessments. You can take the Myers-Briggs or the DISC, and they gave me a lot of interesting information about myself, but none of it really felt actionable. So I felt I felt stuck. And also, the Mary Kay business had been so good to me that I felt guilty that I wanted to leave it.
Sure.
I had this amazing company and these amazing teammates, but what I ended up doing was hiring a life coach.
Wow.
And that process is really powerful. And so that's when I really began to see that even though I couldn't see the whole staircase, I could start taking the first step. And I didn't know what the implications of that were going to be. But eventually, I did leave Mary Kay. And it was kind of a gradual leaving. And I stepped into this brand new career of what I do now, and that I'm a life coach in a business environment, and I really help people now connect their work and their lives with a deep sense of purpose.
That's incredible. It really is, because you're now helping people, and so you're not just selling plots of land or pink Cadillacs or soda water, but you're actually helping people in their lives.
Yeah.
Which is a deeply significant thing.
Yeah. And I think I was helping people in Mary Kay too. It's a very purpose-driven company.
Sure.
Their mission is to enrich women's lives, and we do it by selling the product and providing an opportunity.
Right.
And we certainly did that. But I think what happens to a lot of us is we get good at something and we kind of get stuck there. And people begin to see us that way, and we start to define ourselves that way.
Yeah. Well, for me to step back, it wasn't to diminish, because we all need stuff in life. But you're actually directly helping people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's more than selling them just something.
And that's what I wanted to do, because I started to feel out of integrity with myself when I was selling makeup. I was not a girly girl. I could care less about the shimmer in your eyeshadow or the shade of your foundation.
Oh, okay.
So it was a huge relief to me to realize that I could leave that part of it behind and continue to do the parts that I really loved.
Okay.
But there were a lot of limiting beliefs around that. How would I make money, or how would I, continue to make it a livelihood if I left the part behind.
Right.
So.
Now, that's a very real concern, because, there are a lot of people that have gone out and tried to do the other vision, moving in a different direction, and it's been very difficult for them.
Yeah.
So that's very good questions on that direction. Well, we're going to take a brief break right now, and we'll be back for Chapter 2. Hello and welcome back to the Omnibus Show. Today's guest is Missy Shopshire, and we are going into Chapter 2, and she's going to tell us about her newly released book. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. Awesome. Should I show?
Yes, please.
Well, the book is called Forces at Work: How to Get What You Want and Keep What You Value. And it really is, this book is my life's work. As I left my career and I learned how to navigate shaking off those golden handcuffs, I became a coach. So the coaching process was so powerful for me. I became really curious about it. And I went and I got a certification from the International Coaching Federation, which is kind of the body that oversees coaches and all that. So I did that, and then I started working with people who were struggling with the same things that I had struggled with.
Okay.
They got really good at something that maybe they no longer wanted to do, or they didn't want to define themselves. And so today I find myself working with people who are feeling misaligned in some way. I mean, that's the problem that the book solves, is if you're feeling misaligned, and maybe it's your career or some part of your life that just doesn't feel like it's aligning with who you really want to be and how you want to show up in the world.
So you're a career chiropractor.
Yes, I'm alignment. That's great. I love that. Maybe that'll be my new marketing shtick.
You can have it.
Thanks. That's new today. So, yeah, it's as I was working through this process with my publisher, that's what I run into all the time. When what I think my unique purpose is to see the potential in people, and to help them. There's a certain amount of, we have to have agency to become who we are supposed to be in the world, and to ask for what we need, and to have that impact in the world. And I saw successful people kind of losing some of their agency because they had built themselves or pigeonholed themselves in some way, and people were depending on them to play that role or to keep that job. So they were starting to feel trapped.
Gotcha. Now, would you say most of these be, most of your clients would be people who are going into middle age? Are they changing? Say like sometimes, because now people don't stay with a company forever. That's very rare now. Usually you'll change somewhere between your late 20s, maybe into your early 30s, where you pivot out of your first career.
Yeah. I'm kind of working with two groups of people right now, interestingly enough, and it's people in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and they tend to really want to find their purpose, and they're not willing to sacrifice their personal life for their career anymore.
Gotcha.
They have a different perspective, I think, than we did, and where we're going to work and then enjoy the fruits of our labor, where they want to enjoy it the whole time. And so I work with them to really shape their career, and as they're building it. And then I work with people that are in their 50s, us 50 and older, who are maybe just feeling like, I've done my time, I've given what I wanted to give to this, and now I'm wondering if I can pivot or if I can reinvent myself in some way.
Yeah. Because you'd mentioned that before or earlier, pre-show, about what happens to a lot of people, particularly men.
Yep.
Once they either retire or nowadays are forced out of a job from cuts and so forth.
Yeah.
What kind of real, what's going on there?
Yeah, I think
What are they facing?
I think they're facing, if they identified or define themselves by their career, they're facing an incredible loss.
Yeah.
It's
like almost a loss of identity, loss of life, kind of.
And not knowing what to do next. And so there definitely is an opportunity to reinvent themselves. But I think even men who are facing retirement, I've worked with some there too, and the statistics are not good for men who retire.
Yes, that's true. I remember when I was younger, there was a statistic, and I can't recall where it was from, but I heard that men die, maybe most men, and this was back in 80s or 90s, that most men, after they retire, die within 6 months. It's either most men or a very large percentage.
It's shocking, and they have a dramatic health decline. And so I read a book years ago. I read books all the time, which is why I love that.
That's very good.
I wrote. So one of them was, it's called Younger Next Year.
Oh, nice.
Chris Crawley, and he wrote it with a doctor who I can't remember the doctor's name right now, but he observed that, in America we have this culture where we retire and that's kind of like the end game. You're done. And you imagine yourself golfing or sitting out on the beach, but the reality is that men started to just really decline.
Yeah.
And he looked at it and he found 3 things that were happening, and I found this to be true in my work as well, that they were succumbing to illnesses and heart conditions and all kinds of things, and death. But he said there's 3 things that they needed to do to combat that and to change the trajectory. And that is, you're going to love these, Dave, is exercise 6 days a week.
This is for me. I'm in that crowd.
It's exercising 6 days a week because our bodies were meant to move. And
exactly.
as a coach, I coach business people all the time, and they're always surprised when I say one of the first things we're going to do is set your health goals, and I'm going to partner with you in your health goals.
That's great.
Yeah, because it's got to be part of it. And the second thing is to avoid the white foods. That's what Chris Crawley, they call them the white foods, the carbs and all that.
Oh, rice
and the
bread,
mostly the fast food
Fast
lane,
food, yeah.
the drive-through lane.
Not processed food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's processed food. But the third thing, and this is where I really like to do my work, is to have a purpose.
Yeah.
And to have something that you care about, because the body is so smart. And when we set it up so that our brain is telling our body that we're done, the body starts to, this process called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, and it starts to communicate to the body that you're done.
Wow.
And so when you think of that, it seems so obvious that we can't tell our body that we're done, or it's going to start acting like we're done.
Yeah, there is quite a strength there, isn't there? There's almost a spiritual element, you know what I'm saying, of the mind, that it's amazing. Some people can just give in, and there are other people who have all these horrible things happen to them. I mean, you've gone through that, where they just overcome, and it's just amazing that, I'm no scientist, but it's just hearing stories through all the decades and how people overcome is just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And they can do it if it's there.
I think it all comes down to mindset.
Yeah.
You know, it's having a growth mindset, which is really starting to emerge. Like positive psychology is a new idea. It's only been around since like the 1990s. And I mean, recognized since the 1990s. And it's this idea that we're always growing, and that as long as we're growing, we're going to continue to expand our lives. And that's why the traditional idea of retirement is kind of detrimental to a lot of people. So we need.
I agree.
Yeah.
My dad died within 3 months after he retired. And my line since then is always to people, never retire.
Yeah.
Even if they have just the grandkids to look after, or if they're with their friends in the community, you don't lie around like bacon. Just it's nice to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And that's good, but that's not your whole life. You
Yeah.
have to have something meaningful.
Yeah. And I think it has to do with the way we set up work in general. You know, we think that our generation was like, we're going to work super hard until we make it, and then we're going to get to rest. And a healthier way to look at it is that we're going to learn and grow, and we're going to create a life that's sustainable while we're working so that we enjoy it. And we might pivot and go down different trajectories during our career, but it's not like there's going to be this drop off at the end where we just really are lost and don't know what to do with ourselves.
Sure, and so there really is a spiritual, a physical, and a what did I get? Spiritual, physical, mental. Is that it? The three aspects of
mental, spiritual, and then physical.
Physical, yeah. Because they all need to be integrated, and it's almost like you leave off all of those if you just retire, if you withdraw. And of course, society, I think, is changing. This is one thing from our crazy society that I think is positive, where because more people are getting old, we have an older population generally, and that is that how do you keep going? You know, because those songs from the '60s, you know, hope I die before I get old. Well, it's like okay, Pete, how do you feel now? You know what I mean? After writing that song, that's the Who, and that aging process. And again, back to I just tell people since my father passed, just like don't retire. Find something else to do. You know, you can create hobbies and such, and it's just. Or work, some kind of work. I think for men it's very important with work. For women it seems, not being a woman, my observation is the relationships. And I think both of those are very, very important. Harvard did a study, and they continue to do a study. It's been over 80 years on aging. And what their results they have found, and they continue to observe this, but this pretty much, people who live longer generally are involved with others, and they keep active. They have a purpose and a meaning in their life, and you know the real important subject of that is what they do with that. But it seems to be very much so. I know now that class reunions are going on for me. I've gotten to the point where you can see the people. You don't know how people's lives are going to be, but it's like generally these folks are going to live well, and these folks are probably going to die earlier. Not to condemn anybody, but you know what I mean, how they take care of themselves, or just life incidences and et cetera, kind of what we're talking. But back to your project and what you're doing with people. I don't want to say how you conclude because people need to read your book, but in the direction, let me ask, in the direction where you lead people, and what you've said so far is leading them in a purposeful direction.
Yeah, I believe at the core of my being that each of us has a unique and important purpose to find and fulfill. And that purpose will fulfill us, but it also will serve the world. And I think helping people find that alignment, and there's 5 sections of the book, and I talk about very briefly. It's having a purpose, which knowing who I am and how I want to show up in the world. It's having a vision, a compelling vision for our life. You know, we talk about apoptosis and all of that, and it's like we have an idea in our mind of how we think things are going to turn out, and our non-conscious brain is working day and night to help us bring that vision into reality. So part of the work I do as a coach is help people create a compelling vision intentionally, so they don't just go with whatever's
Yeah,
drop
they
it
don't
in
do
there.
the whatever thing.
Yeah.
And then they end up sitting on the recliner with potato chips.
Yeah, because that's what they see. You know, in one of the talks I give, I have two women. One is who are both in their 70s, and one is a bodybuilder, and one is an old lady kind of with hunched over
In
and
her
a cane and a
70s.
purse. Yeah, and they have.
Oh, I've seen that picture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they just have two very different visions of what it looks like to be 70.
Sure.
And it's really compelling and powerful if we have a compelling vision of what it looks like. Like one of my goals was to be able to do a handstand when I turned 50, and I can do that now. I won't do it here for you today.
All right. We won't pull that. Have you pull that out of the hat.
I started working towards it, and it just makes me feel like a rock star that I can do a handstand.
Good for you.
So, and then agency is kind of the pinnacle of the book, and that is making sure that we are kind of donning this uniform of this is who I am and this is what I bring to the world. So I'm going to be bold to ask for what I need and to step into this space. Mm-hmm. And then intention is another topic that I've spent a lot of time learning about, is that we have underlying intentions that really, those are the agreements, the internal agreements that we make with ourselves that always bring results. Yeah. So we have to get clear and we have to align our intentions, our underlying intentions with what we're really about. And then lastly is inspired action. So once we kind of get those 4 pillars in place, then we can start taking inspired action. And I like to, it's very practical in my book. I like to help people in 3 different types of inspired action. And one is a personal practice. Mm-hmm. That's something it's something small that you just do every day that makes you feel like you're being who you are. You know, for me, it's practicing my handstand every day. And my kids think it's hilarious. They'll walk through and I'm standing on my hands and be in the doorway of my kitchen. My friend Lori wanted to become an author.
Yeah.
So she had a personal practice of sitting her butt in her chair for 2 hours on every Saturday morning when her kids were little and writing. She eventually got a book deal. But it was just a personal practice that she committed to.
Sure.
And another form of inspired action is to create a project. And you can do this. If you're wanting to leave your job, you can still keep your same job, but create a project that will help you move more into what you feel like your true purpose is. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked, you had Sam Arcey on the show.
Sam was with us.
Yeah, Broadway Sam.
Sam.
And Sam and I met, and I have always had this love for Broadway. And so one of the projects that I created, even as I was writing my book, was to become an investor in one of his shows. Okay. So we now have 2 shows that we're invested in together that will hopefully be Broadway or the West End very soon. And that makes me,
fun.
Yeah. And it's
Are you going to sing too?
No, I could sing. That's another show, probably.
That's another show.
But so that's just an example of a project. It's something that you're passionate about, that you care about. It's not even, it doesn't even have to feel logical, but it's just something you want to do because you want to do it.
Okay.
And the last form of inspired action is something you alluded to earlier, and that's those partnerships. And that's those relationships. It's seeking out people that you want to be around. Mm-hmm. And who is it in your life that you admire, that you would be friends with if you could? And honestly, I had the courage when I started writing this book to ask Bob Goff to write the foreword for my book. And I started going out. I went out to his writer's workshop, and I went to a workshop that he was doing in Southern California. And while I was there, I had the courage to approach him and ask him to write the foreword for my book. And
fabulous.
He said yes. And throughout this whole project, he has been one of my best supporters, has stayed in touch with me. And that's something that never would have happened had I not had that commitment to expanding my partnerships.
Well, fabulous. That's just great. I think that's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
And but forces at work. Missy, it's been great having you on the show today.
Thank you.
So
I love
much.
this conversation. Thank you.
It's been great. Well, I'm going to do it now. This is Forces at Work by Missy Shopshire. And now, you've been number 1, haven't you?
Yeah, surprisingly. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but we released the book last week, and it hit the number 1 best-selling spot in 5 different categories. Wow. So it's doing well, and I'm just really excited that the message is getting out there, and I hope that will help a lot of people.
Well, great. We'll put this in the description. As well, we will put the link to Missy's website for coaching if you'd like to follow up with her. And it's been so great having you on and your conversation with you today.
All right.
Well, thank you, Missy.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Omnibus Show. We would like to thank our sponsor, Hotel Carmichael. We're shooting today at Feinstein's. We look forward to being with you on the next episode of The Omnibus Show.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.